proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
Hey guys, Andrew Hollister here, your host of Radio Free New York. I'm here at the WYSL studios with none other than Bob Savage.
Hey-o!
So,
Ed McMahon imitation.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to actually tease you guys a little bit about something that we're going to talk about later in the show. And that is, have you heard of the guy who paid $3,000 in taxes and received a $980,000 tax return?
I wonder if you'd like to hear a really sad story from me.
Yeah. So if we get to it at the end of the show, I'm going to bring that up because I'm just mind blown that this happened and that this slipped through the cracks. But before we go there, I got to talk about the weekend. You know, the weekend was a little cold. Yesterday was kind of chilly, and so was Saturday. And there was a freedom rally in Batavia.
Do tell.
Oh, yeah. So that was pretty cool. I ended up being a speaker there, which was awesome. But the thing that was, I think, so amazing about it is it was cold outside. There was wind and snow falling, and there were people there of all ages, age 8 to 86. You know, one of the speakers, I think, was 86 years old. Cool. And it was frigid, you know, and everybody showed up.
It's frequently that way in Batavia. Batavia is known for that.
Yeah, and it was great. And people actually from all over Western New York, I guess some people drove a couple hours to be there. And it was really people that were willing to stand out in the cold and say, geez, I have to say something now. I can't keep it any longer. Like, New York is just crushing us. It's just hurting us. New York, stop passing these awful laws. Stop prosecuting people for things that shouldn't be prosecuted for. Stop raising my taxes. Stop taking my money. You know, just everything. So it was a really cool event. I was really, really happy to be there. Glad to be invited. And it was encouraging, I guess, to see. Was
Larry there, your former running mate?
No, it wasn't. In fact, it was put together, I think, by a couple churches in conjunction with Genesee County Scope and the Constitutional Coalition of New York. Just a bunch of organizations came together and said, we want to get people together and do this, and reached out and asked if I'd come and speak.
Very nice. Well, that's great to hear. How big was the crowd? Pretty good size?
It was decent. I want to say maybe between 40 and 60 people.
On a snowy day, that's fantastic.
I know. You couldn't walk through the crowd. It was great. So, and like I said, the age range there, one guy brought his daughter, and I was talking with him, and I thought that he was, I went up to him because I wanted to say, I'm really excited to see that you brought your daughter. She looked like she was maybe 9 or 10 years old. And, that it's important for them to see this and be a part of this. And I thought he was going to say that she didn't want to go. And instead he said, yeah, I tried to get her not to come. Because it was
not to go.
Yeah, because it was so cold and she hadn't been feeling well the day before. And she looked up and she said, no, I wanted to be here. And it was just amazing.
That's encouraging to see a child being brought up right like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Being aware of the precious gift that we have in this country of liberty.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was just, it was really powerful. It was great. And I just wanted to share it with you guys to let you guys know that there is still hope here in New York. If you've got young children who are like, no, I want to stand out in the snow and the cold. She had a red nose. It was running, her cheeks were all rosy. It was cold outside. And she was like, no, I want to be here. It was amazing. And then she was like, and I want chicken fingers afterwards.
Center Street, is it Steakhouse? Center Street Smokehouse, I think it is. It's the barbecue place.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh. Guys, you got to check that out. Center Street in Batavia.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I think we were on Center Street. I think it was like 1 Center Street. It was right in front of the town hall there.
Oh, so, right. Okay. I know where there's like an open space there.
Yeah. That's where we were. And, people had the American flag, the Gladison flag, the thin blue line flag, which was interesting. I found a lot of people got upset about the thin blue line flag, not at the rally, but on social media. And I think I want to address that because I think people misread what's going on there. So people were upset to see the Gladison flag alongside with the thin blue line flag.
You mean the Gadsden flag?
Gadsden flag. Yeah. Right. And they were upset because they said, well, who do you think is enforcing these unconstitutional laws? And I think that actually brought up a divide that the right doesn't talk about very often, the conservative community, the patriot community, the Second Amendment community, that there is like this kind of like underlying rift of people who they're not necessarily anti-cop, but they get upset when they see things supporting police because they don't see them as good anymore because they don't feel like they're standing up for our rights.
Thank you, Barack Obama. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, just really dividing the people, turning the people against the police. I can really
this is the statists. This is the statists again, right? I mean, these are the people who want national authority top down. And but anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Yeah. No, I think it's important to address that this is becoming an issue in society where the media has spent years, I mean, literally years, pitting people against the police. But now New York State especially putting police officers in a situation where they have to choose between feeding their family and enforcing unconstitutional laws, you're seeing the conservative base start to turn against the police as well. And it's not like I don't want to paint with like a really broad brush here because there are many, many people that respect the police. There's many people that appreciate the police. And even the people that are upset about this, when they're in trouble, they want to pick up the phone and call the police and know that they're going to be there. So it's really like as I was seeing this go on social media, I was like, man, this is like some of these people are truly, truly conflicted because of the situation we've put our police officers in. And it's really unfortunate. And in general, I support police officers. But I tell you what, a police officer goes and enforces an unconstitutional law, I also have a serious problem with that. And I think that we put them in a tremendously difficult situation because they're being pulled in so many directions. Like I couldn't imagine being in an officer situation right now. I would like to think that I would be one of those officers that says, no, I'm not going to enforce this at all. I took an oath of office, this and that. But then I think these officers, they see the buddy next to them, they arrest somebody. They see it go to court and the DA prosecutes it. And then the judge upholds the prosecution. They rule against it. And then I feel like they're desensitized to their oath of office in the Constitution.
It's a nuanced situation because this has been on. You have to look at history. You can't just look at one point in history. So you got some guy or gal who's got, I don't know, 12, 15, 20 years in as a law enforcement officer, and now all of a sudden we have this progressive swing where public opinion is turned against law enforcement, and now they're getting this message that enforcing the law is a bad thing and that they have to, first of all, be motivated by their conscience as opposed to their oath. Remember the Oath Keepers here in New York State. So their conscience tells them, well, I really shouldn't enforce this unconstitutional thing. But if I take that action, I'm basically killing my career. Yeah. My career is dead. Where do I go from here? I've got kids heading for college. I've got a mortgage. It's not just, I'm going to stand on my principle. It's not that simple. It's a much more nuanced situation than that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, it is, and I think this comes back to the discussion of changing them from police officers to law enforcement officers. Changing the idea. We used to have a prevalence of peace officers, and I was surprised a year ago to meet somebody who was actually training to become a peace officer. And I was like, we still have those? Like, I didn't even know, But I think where we have an issue is when they changed it from police and community engagement to law enforcement. That really changed the dynamic. And I think when people, they see that thin blue line, there's people that are thinking the peace officers, the police, the community people. And then there's other people that are thinking law enforcement, nothing else, like in enforcing bad laws. Yeah, muscle. Yeah, the Gestapo.
Yeah, the best, by the way, the most graphic example of that I can think of is what's happened in the last 15, 20 years to the DEC. Now, the guys from the Region 8 DEC used to come over here all the time. I remember Ron Schroeder, and they sponsored the Hunting and Fishing Days over there, which is this big event every September.
Oh, yeah.
And
here, right?
Yeah. Region 8 on
every year.
Yeah, routes 5 and 20 between Lima and Avon.
Yep.
And, people would go there by, the hundreds, if not thousands. I mean, the cars would be lined up all up and down 5 and 20 there. And the DEC guys used to drive around in little pickup trucks, and some of the SUVs are all painted white.
Yep.
And they had the little blue, water, and green, tree logo.
Yeah.
The little swirly thing, and it was friendly looking, and it was all about the environment.
Looking thing.
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It had little waves in it. And now they drive around in these freaking up-armored black, Chevy Tahoes or whatever they are, these big SUVs. There's 18-inch letters on the side that say, police.
Yeah.
And they've got they're wearing the bulletproof vests.
Yeah.
And it just looks like a lot of muscle,
Yeah, it does. Well, and a lot of people do talk about like the militarization of our police force and how they've got up armored vehicles in the city. And some people go, well, it's the city, they need it. But it's the whole idea of the presence in what you see that I think really makes people pretty uncomfortable. So we're going to take a quick break here on Radio Free New York, and we'll be back in a moment.
Treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. Great pizza, fresh and good. Simply the best in your neighborhood. Come in, we'll get to know you. Call you by name. We can bring it to you any time of the day. Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria.
This is Dom Genova, owner of Genesee Valley Motors in Avon, your no-nonsense car dealer. Well, we're your no-nonsense truck dealer, too, selling Rams and Fords up to the mightiest that they make. And we have a shop with Master Techs, open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week, even Saturday, so you can get your truck serviced when it's not billing hours for you. You may not be used to that. Visit RochesterWorkTrucks.com. That's RochesterWorkTrucks.com.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
All right, guys, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I want to welcome some of the people listening on our live stream. Nathan, Michelle, Sarah, Nancy, Amanda, Carrie, Luke, and Matt. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to put some comments in here if you guys want to contribute. I see some are starting to flow in right now. If you guys have any questions as we go through the show. And also, feel free to call in. If you guys ever want to call into the show, number is 585-346-3000. Once again, that's 585-346-3000. Give us a call. Ask us a question. Give us your feedback live on the air. I love it when people call in. So I got some news for us.
News?
That is, I think we might be getting a wall.
A wall?
A wall, but not the wall that everybody thinks we're getting. Florida might put up a wall to keep people from New York out. So this comes from an article I read this morning.
There goes my retirement.
Yeah, there goes your retirement. Yeah. So while Cuomo, he's busy blaming everybody but himself for the tax situation here. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later. But Florida is actually worried about what they're calling the blue state refugees who are moving to Florida to escape our just ridiculous taxes. And so the census data actually supports this, saying that New Jersey and New York are the biggest contributors to Florida's population right now.
I was down in Tampa, St. Pete, I don't know, 10 years ago. I picked up some municipal publication. They were talking about, I don't know how the metro there is, it's getting, is it 3,500 people a month?
Really?
We're moving into the area.
Huh. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. No, I mean, people are just pouring in. And so what they're saying is that it's starting to change the politics in Florida.
Now, it's the Colorado syndrome.
Yeah. So what they're saying is, like, with their last gubernatorial, how their conservative candidate won by like a razor thin margin.
Yeah.
That never would have been the case like a few years ago. And they're pointing at places like Virginia, where people left high tax Maryland, went into Virginia, and now the politics are changing and all of that.
Well, so look at the wonderful leadership they've got in that state these days.
Yeah. Well, but they're saying that's a result of all the migration, right? So
the biggest employer in the country is the federal government. They all live in Virginia.
Yep. Yeah, so it's interesting. I love the term blue state refugees. Like,
yeah.
that's
a lot to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Reddit, but Reddit is kind of like this online forum. It's very popular. People post just the most random stuff on there, and it's just tons and tons of engagement. And like a link to this article like showed up on Reddit as well. So I was just kind of like perusing through, and people are like, "Yeah, this is what's happening in Texas. This is what's happening in my state. You know, all these blue state refugees." And I'm sure it's happening all over the country. It's happening all over the country. And I think what people don't realize is when people talk about leaving New York, and we talk about losing 1 million people since Cuomo took office here in New York, I think people think that that's only conservatives. Because Cuomo, said, conservatives have no place here in New York. And so therefore, a lot of times I think people think, well, that's 1 million conservatives that left the state. But that's not true. Like, leftists, people left-leaning progressives, they run away from high taxes too.
Right.
It's not just conservatives. So that's something that I guess I never spend much time thinking about. And as I read this, I'm like, yeah, the liberals run away from taxes just as much as the conservatives do. My worry is that now that they're bringing those values to these other states, they are now impacting the politics there. And I think I might have shared this story on the air during one of the other shows. But I'll share it with you guys again in case you missed it. I have a friend who left New York a few years ago for that reason. High taxes, terrible political climate. And no, I'm not talking about the weather. Bad business climate. Still not talking about the weather.
Yeah. Andy, are you listening?
Yeah. And so he left. He actually moved to South Carolina, a state that many would consider a free state compared to New York. And I saw him a couple weekends ago. And he said, "You know what terrifies me?" He said, "It's following me."
Yeah. It's a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, progressivism is infecting places like Oklahoma.
Yeah.
The Southeast, which of course has traditionally been a conservative stronghold.
Yeah. Yeah. So when he said that, he said, I left New York because of all these bad things. He said, "It's following me." And my true concern is that New York State is one of the frontline states, if not the frontline state. If we don't make some serious change in New York, 20, 30 years from now, the United States is going to look like New York.
Yeah.
So that's something I just want to share with you guys. That Florida may consider building a wall to keep all the New Yorkers and New Jerseyans out.
Build it around the villages.
Yep. To keep us from going there. But speaking of Cuomo and all this other ridiculous stuff,
we have the Cuomo theme here.
There you go, the Cuomo theme. Have you heard his new bit? Because he's got a new bit going on. But before we hear the new bit, let's listen to the old bit.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
Yeah, so that is Governor Cuomo. America was never that great.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, now his new bit is this. Economically, this is what Cuomo said. He said this on the 13th, so just a few days ago. Economically, we are less competitive than other states now.
I wonder how that happened.
And guess what his reason is? This time, not the weather.
It's not the weather.
This time, it's not the weather. We should mark this down, February 18th, as the date that Andrew Cuomo and Andrew Hollister agree with each other, because he says, economically, we are less competitive than other states now because our taxes are higher.
And how did that happen?
Yeah. So now
It's Trump's fault.
Yes,
Blame it on Trump.
Yes. So actually, he made this statement and then followed up to blaming our high taxes on Trump. He literally did. So
I was kidding.
Yeah, I know.
And you're serious.
No, and I'm serious. You were joking. I'm serious.
OMG.
Yeah. So what happened is this was him trying to attack Trump over the federal tax changes. And he was trying to say that the new federal tax plan hurt New York because our taxes are so high that now, because of the new federal tax plan, you can't write off your New York State taxes anymore. That's the SALT deduction.
So Andy's been around for 9 years now, I think? Yeah, 9 years. And Trump comes in and he passes a tax measure, a year and a half ago?
Yep.
And all of the high taxes and all the spending is all Trump's fault.
Yep.
Well, what else do you expect from Cuomo?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I wanted to address it just for a moment so people understand what this change was, because I know for a lot of people, me included, a lot of our taxes is kind of like smoke and mirrors and mystery, but I just happen to understand a little bit on how this works, and I was actually thinking maybe of bringing a CPA in on the show to help describe this further, but essentially you have what's called a SALT deduction, which stands for state and local taxes, and the way I understand it is you used to be able to take all the taxes that you pay in New York State, chop that off your income, and then you would pay taxes on what's left to the federal government. Well,
you would itemize. That'd be part of your itemizing process.
Yep. So what the federal government did instead is they gave us a higher, almost like a credit.
Standard deduction.
Yeah, a higher standard deduction.
Standard deduction went way up and the rates went down.
Yeah.
And the rates went down with corporate as well. And see, this is why people are flummoxed, because now they're getting the refund check back from the IRS, and it's not as big as it used to be.
Yeah.
So the uninitiated, the people who are not particularly aware of the way the taxes work, didn't understand that their paycheck went up this year.
Correct.
Because their taxes went down. So less was withheld from their paychecks every week. So naturally you would get less of a deduction. But getting less of a deduction, less of a refund is a good thing.
Yes, because you gave less to the government. But the other piece is now you actually see how much you pay in state tax.
Right.
And that's why...
And Andy doesn't like that.
No.
This is true of all the high-tax states, too, by the way.
Yes. Well, because he actually went further to say that, they purposely hurt all of the blue states. And all the red states
purposely hurt them. They're trying to, the Trump administration is trying to help people with tax reform, you nitwit.
Yeah, so it's just funny because what we're seeing here is the idea of different management styles, right? That if you really boil it down to...
Well, it's also the difference between truth and fiction.
Oh, well...
It's not just management style.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's lying to you or they're telling you the truth. What's the difference?
Yeah. But what I mean in management styles is the blue states typically have higher taxes. Therefore, this new tax plan looks bad to them because now you see how high their taxes really are.
Yeah, they can't blame it on the feds.
Exactly. Whereas the red states, their management style has been, a lower tax rate, so it looks really good in those states. So it's just interesting because what's happening is transparency, more transparency, and Cuomo does not like that at all. It's making him look really, really, really bad. And speaking of things that make him look bad, did you see the numbers on the Buffalo Billion?
Oh, yeah.
$750 million. There's a lot of zeros there. They created only 700 jobs.
Yeah, and the worst part of that is a lot of those jobs, even those jobs, could be gone by the end of the year.
Yeah, no, they're in the process of what seems to be filing for bankruptcy now. And Tesla or Panasonic is going to be taking the project over. So,
well, I thought they already had. Well, okay, they're in the process of doing that, but I mean, the whole thing was supposed to produce, what was it, 30,000 jobs? Then it went to 3,000 jobs. Now it's 700 jobs, and most of those are going away. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, have we seen this movie before?
Oh, yeah.
Does anybody remember the wonderful photonics panacea that was promised for Rochester?
Yep. Startup New York, Photonics, Buffalo Billion, Empire Development Plan. You know, all of these plans.
How about the movie production place over in Syracuse?
Oh yeah,
that just got sold for $1, by the way.
Yep. We are not good at making government investments here in New York.
Government's not good.
Yeah.
We're not good at paying for it because we don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Guys, we're going to take a quick break here on Radio Free New York. We'll be back in a moment.
WYSL 92.1 FM, the new FM 95.5 West, and News Power 1040 AM. WYSL.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
At University Eye Specialists, I see many patients who suffer from dry, irritated, or itchy eyes. Sometimes these symptoms are often due to severe dry eye. Over-the-counter eye drops often help, but sometimes dry eye may require treatment with prescription medication. Dry eye is a very treatable medical condition that should be taken very seriously. The health of your eyes is very important to us. Please feel free to call any one of our local offices for an appointment.
In America, we are living longer, healthier lives. The longer we live, the more likely we are to develop eye conditions such as glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic eye disease. If you are over the age of 40, it's important to have a thorough eye examination in order to identify vision-threatening conditions at an early stage. At University Eye, we have the technology and experience to screen for and to treat glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic retinopathy. At University Eye, your vision is our mission.
Phone 1-800-724-0938.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
All right, welcome back to.
I had to put a quarter in there.
Yeah, drop a quarter in the jukebox here. Welcome back to Radio Free New York, guys. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. Before we took our break, we were talking about the Buffalo Billion and how we've spent $750 million in taxpayer money, of course, which means my pocket, your pocket, and created a whopping 700 jobs. Which is just par for the course for every New York economic stimulus program. Talk about Startup New York, Empire Development, Photonics, you name it. The success is about the same. And not just that, the corruption's always there.
I was just about to say, and don't pay any attention to the fact that all these contractors and people associated with all these huge, massive, grandiose projects, a lot of them are going to the slammer.
Yeah.
For extended stays.
Yep. Yeah. So, and that's the point right there is Cuomo's person in charge of this accepted $300,000 in bribes.
Is it Joe Prococo?
And I think it was. I forget.
Well, there's Alain Caliaros.
Caliaros.
He was the guy that Cuomo described as a genius.
Yep.
He was behind all the Polytechnic stuff.
SUNY Polytechnic. Yep. Yeah, so he did all the bid rigging, accepted $300,000 in bribes, and took it with him to jail, I guess. I'm not sure what happens with the money. Like, I don't know. But certainly the people who got screwed here are the people of New York, because we paid, $1.25 million plus per job created. And
they're temporary jobs.
Yeah, temporary jobs are going away. We'll never see that money, never see that benefit. Cuomo's buddies got paid, though. Cuomo's buddies got paid. And it's just like Amazon. Like, a lot of people, they look at Amazon and they forget about the fact that Cuomo's friend ran the consulting firm hired by Amazon.
Sure. So you got to grease the right people.
Yeah.
To play the game.
Yeah. Yep. So Cuomo's buddies got paid on Amazon too, and they're not even coming. I mean, that's just how this works here in New York. That's how much of an issue it is. And speaking of Cuomo's buddy, did you see what happened with Schneiderman recently?
Yeah, there's something happened. I'm drawing a blank on it though.
Yeah,
probably at one of those senior moments.
So not so long ago. I think it was about a year ago, maybe 2 years even. I think it was about a year ago. Women started coming forward about him, abusing them.
Yeah, he would beat him up.
Yeah,
basically shove him around and stuff.
Beat him. Some of the things they said: slapping, choking, being spit on, and a whole bunch of other stuff that probably shouldn't be mentioned on the air.
Yeah.
And he's using his campaign money to pay for the lawsuit.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. $320,000, I think he spent out of his campaign for legal defense from last fall.
Turns out in New York, that's perfectly legal.
Oh, sure.
Perfectly legal. And
not just in New York.
Oh, really? Other states too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how these dirtbags... You ever wonder, folks, why everybody's running for president? Because it's a great way to suction up a whole bunch of cash.
Sure.
And it's completely unrestricted. I mean, you can basically use it for anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what's happening. I mean, and I'm reminded of the likes of, Skelos and Sheldon Silver, who spent millions and millions of dollars on their legal funds, all of which came from donations from their campaign funds. They didn't spend a dime of their personal money. And that's the same thing that's happened here. And guess who's reaching out and getting kind of upset about this?
Anthony Weiner?
Yes. Good guess. No, people from the Me Too movement. Which is,
how about that, huh?
Yeah. And some of the Democrat activists.
See, this is where we get to see the fault lines start to crack open in all of these liberal causes.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden there's some conflicts that come up, and that's kind of the price of tribal politics now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he carried the torch for them, right? He was like,
he's Mr. Me Too.
Yeah. So Mr. Me Too is now slapping, choking, spitting on women, and calling them slaves and stuff like that. That conflicts with the Me Too movement, just really, really badly. And I remember, one of the stories was just absolutely terrifying from this girl. It was, she was like chained up for days and ran away to a friend who had known this was happening for months or something. When this all came out, he stepped down right away. He knew he knew it was going to be bad. Yeah. So he paid out about $340,000 in legal fees and was never charged with anything or prosecuted.
That's, by the way, not much.
I was surprised at how low it was.
Yeah, usually with these cases, you're well up into seven figures with legal costs.
Yeah, no, easily. So probably helps that he was the Attorney General, though.
Because I'm a big shot.
Yeah. So one of the activists, they said that, the money was given in good faith by donors that expected Mr. Schneiderman to help women. What a luxury to be able to assault women who donated to your campaign and then use the money to defend yourself. So, of course, his attorneys didn't respond to this or anything. His response was simply, I accept full responsibility for my conduct and my relationships with my accusers and for the impact it had on them.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Look. You hear this all the time from the elite ruling class. I take full responsibility. Hillary Clinton, every dirtbag out there who's gotten caught doing something. Yeah. Nobody takes responsibility until a price is paid.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the price being paid is not by them in this situation at all. Not by them at all. I actually met him once. And the
words creepy.
The words I would use to describe him, I can't say on air. But I met him during a gun buyback that he was
reptilian,
running.
I think.
Yeah. So he was running a gun buyback in the city, totally exploiting the neighborhood that I grew up in, and using them to stand on the shoulders of the brokenness in my neighborhood. So we actually formed a protest there, and he showed up. they brought in firearms that they said were confiscated in the area. That's what we said on, this neighborhood, these are the guns we took off the streets here. Sawed-off shotguns. They had a Tommy gun.
What?
Like serial filed off.
Who has a Tommy gun?
Oh, yeah, exactly, right? And I was like, come on, don't, he actually admitted off camera they didn't even come from New York State. These firearms that they had like this table display set up to shoot the B-roll with the the TV cameras. And so as we were forming this protest, now here's the thing: we weren't protesting the idea that people could come and sell their firearms. We were protesting the idea that was the cause of the crime in the area, because it absolutely was not. But also B, they were tricking mostly elderly people into turning in some cases, like fairly family heirloom firearms for a $25 gift card. And so we just were letting people know, hey, you could get hundreds of dollars for this if you take it to like a gun shop. Like, here's an address to one nearby type thing. He showed up. He went to the crews right in front of us who were just getting set up. And he said flat out, we could hear him clear as day: if any of those people protesting gets on camera, I'll have your job. You'll never be in media again. and then proceeds to go up and start doing it. Now, luckily for us,
no megalomania there.
Oh, right? Yeah, absolutely. So lucky for us, Time Warner, true to their nature, was late. So they didn't show up on time. They didn't get the nasty gram threat. And the very first thing they did was interview us before they even made it to him. So we did end up actually getting some press and raised awareness on this issue. But that's just the type of guy. I mean, he was just so arrogant, lied straight on camera, then openly admitted that he lied off camera. I mean, it was just it was crazy. I think I actually have a video of it somewhere that I posted on YouTube like years ago. I should dig it up and see if I can find the link. So, but yeah, he's the type of guy when you meet, you get the little he's
the creepies.
Yeah, it just feels wrong. And then you find out about this stuff and you're like, yeah, that's why. That's why.
That's our guy.
Yep. That's our guy.
So now he'll write some book, and of course the liberals will love it, and they'll buy it.
Yeah. Well, and he's still got millions left in that campaign fund. I think they said he's got like $6.5 million in that fund still.
Well, apparently he's going to need it, because waiting in the wings, I guarantee you, are the civil suits.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I was surprised because the way that I had first read it, it made it sound like, that $300,000 was half of his campaign fund. And I'm like,
oh no.
I was like, that seems really small, but like, I was kind of like glad it made a big dent, And then I was reading, I was like, oh no. This guy's got another 6.5 million. It's just, it was half of what he had raised that 1 year.
Well, look, once upon a time here in the great Empire State of New York, back when we had 45 congressional delegates, for example, we made things in New York. We made shoes. We made car parts. We made clothing, we made furniture, we were the Empire State. Of course, tremendous agricultural industry. Now, the primary product, which is generated by New York, is lawsuits. Yeah. So what the Attorney General of New York does is they sue this law firm, and they sue that insurance firm, and they sue, and then everybody settles out of court. It's kind of like a cost of doing business. I will absolutely guarantee you, as the old TV copy went, that some of that settlement money found its way to politicians, highly placed politicians, perhaps in the Attorney General's office, perhaps the Attorney General.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that didn't happen.
Yeah, no.
So if we had like really vigorous enforcement of corruption against corruption in the state, Schneiderman would be being prosecuted for that.
Yeah. And that's the thing about sitting in that seat. You know how all the cards are set up. You know how the game is played. You were there. You're the one. And he stepped down. Do you think he probably didn't have a hand in who went in his place? I mean, because
these people never go away.
Yeah. It's just like, there were some people who in the city of Rochester race that happened in 2017 who didn't get reelected. You know what they got? They got appointed to positions after they lost their election.
Sure.
So those people didn't go away. They stayed exactly where they were. Actually got a raise, believe it or not. And they're still there.
Nice pension.
Yep. Pension, everything, salary, taxpayer funded, everything. And the city is just continuing to decay and crumble around itself.
It looks horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, downtown Rochester it's so sad because, I mean, if you're like me, you grew up around here 50, 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. You remember what Rochester used to be like.
Yeah.
It was an interesting city, much more interesting, vibrant, and lots more going on than most cities its size.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's funny. I'm kind of waiting as I'm looking out the window here and seeing the snow flurries. I'm waiting for summertime or at least spring so I can go around. I've started taking pictures lately, and I'm going to create a theme slideshow, and it's going to be zombie apocalypse movie or Rochester, New York. and it's just you go through the pictures and try and guess which one's a zombie apocalypse movie and which one is Rochester, New York, and we'll see how many people get the answers right. So we're going to take a quick break here, guys, on Radio Free New York. We'll be back in a moment.
From Avon Feed and Supply, introducing Dry Shod waterproof footwear. Dry, comfortable feet, even on those warmer days. Avon Feed has a big selection of dry shod for men and women, offering fully flexible athletic shoe sizing for great fit and maneuverability. Its exclusive insulation breathes and keeps you warm without bulk, and you'll stay dry top to bottom with state-of-the-art waterproofing. While you're at Avon Feed, find everything for your pet, from feeding bowls to toys, leads, collars, beds, crates, and tie-outs. Avon Feed and Supply has with a big pet chain stores will never have. Tim Cole and his great knowledgeable staff. And if you think you'll save money at that pet superstore, well, think again. While you're at Avon Feed, don't forget the two-legged pets with River Rat Thousand Island cheese in great flavors, including hard-to-find mean and nasty. Plus, once again, nut butters, Nunday mustards, and Rickles pickles. Open weekdays 9 to 6, Saturday 9 to 4. Avon Feed and Supply. West Main Street at the bottom of the hill, just west of the Circle.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
Hey guys, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. Got Bob Savage here in the studio. And man, it's just a lot of corruption and dirty, nasty stuff in New York to talk about.
Nah, not really.
This is never ending, it seems. But somebody had mentioned, and of course I just scrolled right by it. Let me pull up the comment here. James had mentioned, so earlier in the show we were talking about failed economic plans, talking about Buffalo Billion, talking about photonics, empire development plans. And James says, thinking about all these scrapped or failed economic development projects really makes me sick. All of that money could have done just as good if we just lit the cash on fire. And I mean, I'm finding myself mostly agreeing with him there. I mean,
if we just had some weenies and some marshmallow.
Yeah. It's
get some benefit out of it.
Something, it's just so hard to see how poorly. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars at this point.
Oh, what was it, Startup New York, the TV campaign?
Yeah,
They spent $70 million just on TV time. I remember sitting here. We always had the TV monitors on here on our flagship station. And you would see, you watch the 6 o'clock news, you'd see those Startup New York spots every single break.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes 2 spots.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they created, ultimately, I forget, 180 jobs or something. Although, I want to say a year ago, the numbers on the website changed to like 1,000 or something like that. And I was like, how'd you go from 180 to 1,000? Maybe it really happened. I don't know. But even so, $74 million for 1,000 jobs? That's
I think
that call that successful.
If I'm recalling the numbers right, I think it was $750,000 per job. Yeah. And I remember that some enterprising journalists, there are some who have a pulse here in New York State, went after some of the fictional companies that supposedly relocated to New York to try to figure out who they actually were. One of them was just, basically it was just It was just a front. Some guy in an apartment complex in Albany, claiming to have relocated this lucrative business from Colorado to New York State because of the climate.
Yeah.
Get it? The business climate.
Yeah. No, I actually had somebody this last week get really upset with me on Facebook because I said until the climate in New York changes, I thought I said, maybe I said business climate, something like that in New York changes, companies will continue to leave. And I was referring to the failed Amazon project. And I had somebody get pretty upset, like, it's not the weather. I'm like, yes, I know. I clearly know it's not the weather.
Must read before you comment. Read first.
But they were upset, and rightly so, as they misread it, if that's what I actually meant. Yes, thank you. Please be upset, because no, it's not the weather at all. It's definitely not the weather. But, so I teased at the very beginning of the show about a guy who paid $3,000 in income tax and received a tax return of $980,000. And ironically, this guy's from Florida. I don't know if he was one of the blue state refugees that went to Florida or not. But in 2018, this guy, he made $18,000, or at least that's what he reported as income on his taxes, and reported that he withheld $1 million on his taxes. Now, before I go into the rest of it, how did this not get picked up? How did this not get flagged? That if you made $1 million, that you just graciously lent it to the government and withholding for a year and only kept $18,000. Like that's just number one on my mind is, how did that not trigger something? How did that not fire off any type of anything that this guy withheld more than 99.8% of his income in taxes and just gave that? And then how is there no record that the government didn't receive that money? So what literally happened is they said, oh, he filed it. It must be true. Issued him a $980,000 tax refund.
You would think that over a certain level, that if a refund gets issued like that would automatically trigger some kind of supervisory review. Like a management review would look at it and say, "Wait a minute, that would flag it somehow, right?"
You would think so. Here's the thing: apparently, they have one. It doesn't hit till somewhere between $2 and $3 million.
Oh,
now. That also scares me.
They can set this up. Look, computers will do whatever you tell them to do, folks. I hate to break the news to you. They don't just decide these things on their own. They set it up so if there's a discrepancy between the earnings and the refund.
What I'm saying. Yeah. You would think that, this guy withheld more than 99% of his income. That doesn't seem right here.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But the other thing that has me concerned is, people are getting between $2 and $3 million tax returns, or at least there's enough $2 million tax returns that they decided to adjust the level between $2 and $3 million to not flag legitimate returns. Like this is the thought. As a computer guy who runs numbers and sets up rules like this, I'm like, well, you normally set the flag limit to somewhere that's common. That would commonly trigger fraud.
Why couldn't it be based on ratio?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's still making me think, who's getting a $2 or $3 million tax return?
Well, probably somebody who makes $15-20 million. It can happen, certainly, but but the discrepancy is the issue here. Yeah. Guy makes $18,000, gets back $980. Obviously that should flag somebody somewhere.
Yeah. So
but of course, government can screw up a 2-car funeral, as we all know.
Oh yeah, I mean there's
no accountability. Nobody ever gets fired. It's so what? So we throw a few $1 million away.
Yeah. Yep. So the other thing that's just mind blowing to me is they're just figuring it out now. So almost $1 million given to somebody who never paid it. There should be a way to at least see that person actually paid the money. Here we are 3 years later,
and they're investigating,
and they're just now figuring this out. Man, that just makes me wonder how much more money is out there.
I raise my hand. First-hand experience. I know a woman who was in a divorce situation, and her ex-husband was, I can't remember what the situation was, but he was on Social Security, and so there were benefits to her and to her child.
Okay.
Yep. So she would be getting these Social Security payments from the Social Security Administration, and it would be, like a few months in a row of $700 and then the money would stop. Okay. And then she would get a letter from the Social Security Administration saying, according to our records, we paid you $600 or $700 a month. Well, you shouldn't have gotten that. So we want you to send back $3,200.
Okay.
And if you can't send back the $3,200, that's okay, because what we'll do is we'll just hang on to your usual $600 or $700 for a few months.
Yeah.
And then it restarted again. So then she gets this letter from the Social Security Administration saying, according to our records, last year, I'm not kidding, our records show that you made $3.25 million.
Nice.
Because of work. Huh. This doesn't even make sense, right? The letter says because of work. So consequently, we're going to withhold the the monthly payments for a little while.
Yeah.
3.2. What? How does an error of that magnitude even occur?
Yeah,
and obviously the letter is completely illiterate. It's written by somebody who doesn't even have a command of the English language.
Sure. Huh. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I had an experience a few years ago where I took some courses, and there was like a tax credit for spending money at school or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. Went there, did it, submitted all the appropriate forms. And then like 2 years later, the government says, oh, you owe us $1,100. What do I owe you $1,100 for? They go, oh, you filed for this credit and you didn't qualify for it. Like, why not? They're like, well, because you never went to the school. I'm like, what do you mean I never went to the school? Like, I have my licensure to prove that not only did I go, I passed the test. And back and forth, took 4 years. Meanwhile, they were withholding my tax returns over this $1,100. Yeah. Yep. So finally, after I think it was about 4.5 years, there's an organization called, I think it's like the Tax Advocate or the Taxpayers Advocate, something like that. There's a separate organization set up by Congress. Get this, because they know how bad the IRS is. That when the IRS can't figure it out, you get these people involved. They're an independent body. They do their own investigation and hopefully fix it. And that's exactly what they did. Within like 2 weeks, it was fixed. I got my money back. And at that point, I vowed to never have a tax return ever again. I always make sure that I owe at the end of each year. Not a tremendous amount, although this year we'll see. But
that's what you want to do, folks. You don't give an interest-free loan to the government.
Yeah.
A lot of people just, I can't wait. This year, I'm getting $4,000 back.
Yeah.
To which I say, you're a sap.
Yeah.
Well, adjust your withholding. Don't give them money. Let them hang on to it. Do they pay you interest? No.
No. And if there's any little mistake, they hold it until they figure it out. And that's what happened with me. So I stopped. I kind of feel bad that so many people can't manage their money, and that's why they need that return. They need to have the government hold on to it interest free, because otherwise they'd never save. They would spend it because they're not good at spending it. So I know why for some people it makes sense. For me, it totally doesn't. I know I'm way better at managing my money than the government ever will be, and I hope more and more people end up there as well. But an interesting response. So this whole situation, they refund $980,000 to somebody who never paid for it. And you know what their response was?
I'm afraid to ask.
Oh, well, we're going to have to look into this. We might not have been fully funded or fully staffed.
That's it. That's right. Now we're going to, yes, okay, because we need more money.
Yep. And I just can't help but think, well, if you weren't giving out $1 million willy-nilly without checking it, you'd probably have all the funding you need.
Behold government accountability, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's an oxymoron. Like plastic glasses.
Yeah. So in 2018, we found $9.69 billion in tax fraud out of, guess how many investigations? 1,700.
Wow.
That's 5.7 million per incident. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here on Radio Free New York. I will catch you guys Friday at 1 p.m.
Pick the perfect pre-owned at Patrick. If you're perusing the web for a pre-owned vehicle, Patrick Buick GMC will present you with all the